Hey guys, so we've gone through the summary of the fulfillment view and its compatibility. What we need to do now is we need to read the nuances, and I'm going to say this, out of all the philosophers we've read, perhaps the best writer is Woolf. That's what I think, anyway. So we need to develop a more detailed, i.e. nuanced, understanding of Woolf's appraisal of the fulfillment view. Appraisal means positive and negative criticisms. We will draw from our prior knowledge gained during the summary, so we can do that. The prior knowledge will give us the ideas, and we can just scaffold the nuances on top of it. We're going to explore nuances. What are nuances? Well, they're the qualifications. Here's the general idea, but blah 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 blah. This is only true if blah 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 blah. That kind of thing, or this is the case because blah 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 blah. So there's the extra reasoning or backing up of the main argument that was presented in the summary. Okay. So that's what I mean by details. Details are like the additional information that support the main ideas that were presented in the summary, and of course examples. All right. Uh, so we're going to explore the nuances of her arguments, and then we're going to be able to articulate positive and negative criticisms of the fulfillment view by the end of this reading. So again, score yourself on these success criteria, pretty pleased with the cherry on top, and then can you draw a picture of an activity that is analogous to Sisyphus rolling a boulder up a hill for all of eternity? Can you do that for me, please? Okay, so the fulfillment view. Let us turn our attention then to the first of the popular views I mentioned, the one that stresses the subjective element, urging each person to find his or her passion and pursue it. It is easy to see why someone would support this advice and find plausible the claim that being able to pursue a passion adds something distinctive and good and deeply good to life. So when she says add, it's almost like she's hitting again on her value theory. All right. For the advice, at least as I understand it, rests on the plausible empirical supposition that doing what one loves doing, being involved with things one really cares about, gives one a kind of joy in life that one would otherwise be without. I like that. She kind of says it's pretty obvious that you do something that is based on your passion because it gives you a joy that you otherwise wouldn't have had. Easy. The reason one should find one's passion and go for it then is because doing so will give one's life a particular type of good feeling. There's that mention of positive feelings that we talked about before. Moreover, the distinctiveness of the type of good feeling in question makes it possible to see how the kind of life that engenders such feelings would be associated with meaningfulness, and how therefore one might be led to identify a meaningful life as a life lived pursuing passions. So here again she's just saying it's easy to see the association because of the distinctiveness of the good feelings that you feel. It's pretty easy to make that association with good feelings and meaningfulness because that's what people want to have. All right, let's keep reading. Let us refer to the feelings one has when one is doing what one loves, or when one is engaging in activities by which someone is gripped or excited as feelings of fulfillment. Such feelings are the opposite of the very bad feelings of boredom and alienation. Although feelings of fulfillment are unquestionably good feelings, there are many other good feelings, perhaps more comfortably classified as pleasures, that have nothing to do with fulfillment. So it's really important. There are many other positive feelings that we have that have nothing to do with fulfillment. I like the way that she worded that. That was better than the summary. Riding a roller coaster, meeting a movie star, eating a hot fudge sundae, finding a great dress on sale can all give one pleasure, even intense pleasure. They are unlikely, though, to contribute to a sense of fulfillment, however, and it would not be difficult to imagine a person who has an abundance of opportunities for such pleasures still to find something subjectively lacking in her life. Okay, so we've got examples of where one can experience pleasure in the conventional sense, but still feel like they're lacking fulfillment. All right. Further, someone whose life is fulfilling has no guarantee of being happy in the conventional sense of that term. Well, we should write that down because that wasn't in the summary. She's saying being happy So living a fulfilling life isn't a guarantee of happiness. I think that needs to be noted. Many of the things that grip or engage us make us vulnerable to pain, disappointment, and stress. Consider, for example, writing a book, training for a triathlon, campaigning for a political candidate, caring for an ailing friend. All those obviously are examples of where we come across pain, disappointment, and stress, but we still find fulfillment through them and good feelings as well. It may later be useful to bring to mind the fact that feelings of fulfillment are but one kind of positive feeling. So she's saying they are one kind of positive feeling and potentially compete with other kinds. Spending one's time, energy, money, and so on the projects that fulfill you necessarily reduces the resources you have for engaging activities that are merely fun or pleasurable. Moreover, the extent that one's sources of fulfillment are sources of anxiety and suffering, the pleasure one gets from pursuing these things may be thought, at least from a hedonistic perspective, and remember when we looked at Callicles and the definition of hedonism, okay, to be qualified or balanced by the negative feelings that accompany it. So she's saying, look, if you perform some kind of hedonic calculus, you might find that the negative feelings that accompany it might totally cancel it out. It's a trade-off. Or they might overwhelm them, and there might be more negative feelings than the feeling of fulfillment. But still, I would argue that the feeling of fulfillment would completely outweigh, in terms of the intensity of feeling, any kind of negative feelings you'd have if you achieved your goal, or if you simply felt fulfillment. So take a note. Still, the fact that most of us would willingly put up with a great deal of stress, anxiety, and vulnerability to pain in order to pursue our passions can be seen as providing support for the idea that fulfillment is indeed a great and distinctive good in life. So it's a value. It's something we try and acquire in life, and it's supported by the fact that people still pursue it regardless of the fact that it can expose us to possible pain, stress, and disappointment. Take a note. As so far as the view that urges us to find our passion and go for it expresses the idea that there is a lot to be said for it. From here on, I shall refer to that view as the fulfillment view. So her fulfillment view equals, here's the formula, define your passion and go for it. Take a note. Because feelings of fulfillment are different from and sometimes compete with other types of good feeling, types that are more paradigmatically associated with the terms of happiness and pleasure, she's saying, look, we find that fulfillment feelings are different and compete with feelings that are usually, in social terms, defined as happiness and pleasure. It's plausible to interpret the fulfillment view as a proposal for what gives meaning to life. So she's saying, because they compete for it and we try and actually achieve feelings of fulfillment, it's quite easy for us, again, to see or to believe that fulfillment equals meaning, because it's another kind of value we try to accrue. All right, take a note. To someone who finds himself puzzled by why, despite having a good job, a loving family, and a healthy body, he feels that something is missing from his life, it provides an answer. Life is not fulfilling, right? If we lack fulfillment, I think it's fair to say we notice it. It's something we need to have, as well as happiness and pleasure. To someone trying to decide what career to pursue, or more generally how to structure his life, it advises against focusing too narrowly on superficial goals of ease, prestige, and material wealth. Nonetheless, the fulfillment view, as I've interpreted, is a form of hedonism. We didn't say this in the summary. She actually believes that the fulfillment view is a form of hedonism. It's another way of seeking some kind of positive feeling. Let's stay away from the idea of pleasure, and we'll stick with the idea of a positive feeling, because, as she said, you can differentiate between fulfillment, happiness, pleasure, paradigmatically, or in terms of the way that these concepts are defined. So we'll just say hedonism in this case is about pursuing good feelings, okay? In that its prescription for the best possible life, in which is included the possession of meaning, rests exclusively on the question of how a life can attain the best qualitative character. Positive experience is, on this view, the only thing that matters. So what she's basically saying is, it's the positive feelings and the positive experience that matters. So the positive feelings, again, is where we get that relationship with hedonism. Positive experience would have to imply positive feelings, which means some kind of hedonistic fulfillment. All right, a positive feeling of fulfillment would come along with it. That's what matters. So that's why she thinks it is a form of hedonism, because you're accruing these good feelings. And hedonism has traditionally been defined as the pursuit of pleasure or a pleasurable life. And there are many different forms of it. But from her point of view, for the sake of just differentiation, and I've said this 3 times before and try and make it really clear, she wants to differentiate between feelings of fulfillment, feelings of happiness, and feelings of pleasure. But all of these are good feelings. So we're going to try, just for today, to redefine hedonism as the pursuit of good feelings. And the point is, she's trying to say, from the fulfillment view, it's about accruing or building up positive experiences which imply positive feelings. Got it? So that's why it is hedonistic. Take a note. For this very reason, it seems to me the view is inadequate as it stands. If the fulfillment view suggests that the only thing that matters is the subjective quality of one's life, then it shouldn't matter in our assessments of possible lives which activities give rise to that quality. If the point of finding one's passion and pursuing it is simply to be fulfilled, that is, to get and keep the feelings of fulfillment, again, so that's the relationship with hedonism, then it shouldn't matter what activities or objects one has a passion for. Considering a variety of lives, all equally fulfilling but differing radically in the sorts of things that give rise to fulfillment, however, makes us wonder whether or not we can really accept this point of view. So she's critical of it because it's a hedonistic perspective, which is about building up your bank of feelings of fulfillment. Okay? And she thinks that's wrong because all that this theory does is take into account the feelings of fulfillment regardless of the object that's actually allowing you to acquire them. Take a note. She thinks the objects matter as well. They have to have worth. Take a note. Imagine, in particular, a person whose life is dominated by activities that most of us would be tempted to call worthless, but which nonetheless give fulfillment to that person. I earlier gave the example of a person who simply loves smoking pot all day, and another, or maybe the same person, who is fulfilled by doing crossword puzzles, or worse, as personal experience will attest, Sudoku. She doesn't like Sudoku. Well, we might also consider more bizarre cases. A man who lives to make handwritten copies of the text War and Peace. Now, if you read War and Peace, copying that out word for word would have to be the most laborious activity. So, or a woman whose world revolves around her love of pet goldfish. Do we think that from the point of view of self-interest, these lives are as good as can be, provided perhaps that their affections and values are stable and the goldfish doesn't die? Just saying, do you actually think from the point of view of self-interest that is the best way to live your life? Initially, perhaps not everyone will answer these questions in the same way. Some will not know what to think. I bet you that was you. That was me when I first read that question. In part, I believe this because we are uncomfortable making negative judgments about other people's lives, even about imaginary other people who are conceived realistically enough to be stand-ins for real people. I don't think, to tell you the truth, it's in your self-interest to obsess with your goldfish. I don't think you're going to grow that way. And I don't think you're really going to grow as a person if you just copy out word for word War and Peace. Would I feel bad about telling someone? Yes. I don't want to tell them that, but that's what I believe. We are especially uncomfortable making negative judgments that diverge from the judgments of the characters would make about their own lives. People don't like telling other people that their hobbies stink. To avoid this problem, let me approach these questions by way of reflection on a more stylized philosophical example, namely the case of Sisyphus. Draw a picture of Sisyphus because it'll be great for your notes, okay? Cheers. Sisyphus in the ancient myth is condemned to an existence that is generally acknowledged to be awful. So objectively, we would say that what he does is an awful thing. He is condemned eternally to a task that is boring, difficult, and futile. I have to explain this to my son. I'll be back in a minute, okay? Thank you. Because of this, Sisyphus' life, or more precisely his afterlife, has been commonly treated as a paradigm of a meaningless existence. Except when we read Albert Camus, remember, when we were talking about Nietzsche, who says that if Sisyphus can rebel against the absurdity of his punishment, he creates meaning. But that's got nothing to do with Wolf. But it's a really interesting paradigm to use in your essay if you're trying to evaluate Nietzsche. The philosopher Richard Taylor, however, in a discussion of life's absurdity, suggests a thought experiment according to which the gods take pity on Sisyphus and inject a substance into his veins that transform him from someone for whom stone rolling is nothing but a painful, arduous, and unwelcome chore to someone who loves stone rolling more than anything else in the afterworld. There is nothing the transformed Sisyphus would rather do than roll that stone. Stone rolling, in other words, fulfills him. And Sisyphus has found his passion, or perhaps his passion has found him, and he is pursuing it to his life's content or afterlife's content. The question is, what should we think of him? Has his life been transformed from horribly unfortunate to exceptionally good? Taylor thinks so, but some of us might disagree. As I have already noted, the reason Sisyphus has traditionally been taken as a paradigm of meaningless existence is that he is condemned to the perpetual performance of a task that is boring, difficult, and futile. In Taylor's variation, Sisyphus' task is no longer boring to Sisyphus, that is, but it remains futile. It does, guys. I mean, from an objective point of view, we can see the futility in it. Even if he finds it fulfilling, most of us will say, yeah, but still, there is no point. Okay, take a note. There is no value to his efforts. Nothing ever comes of them. Even if due to divine intervention Sisyphus comes to enjoy and even feel fulfilled by his activity, the pointlessness of what he is doing doesn't change. Can you take a note of what she's trying to say about Sisyphus? She tries to say, look, it still is a futile activity, even if he's deluded into thinking it's fulfilling. And we can assess that objectively from our external point of view. Take a note. Thanks, guys. Thomas is a little inspired by Daddy's reading of a Year 12 philosophical text. So he wants to do his division and show that he's doing a lot of thinking as well. So that's why I had to stop for a bit. All right, so in light of this, many will feel that Sisyphus' situation remains far from enviable. So let's put that to the test. I think she's right in saying this. Most of us don't want to be deluded into the fact that rolling a ball up a hill is fantastic. Even if we subjectively think it's fantastic, it's fulfilling. From an external point of view, most of us say the point's futile. I don't want to be deluded into thinking about it. And if I don't want to be deluded into thinking that it's the best thing ever and then forced to do it, then objectively it has to have something that is makes it not a worthy activity. Okay. So you can be deluded into thinking that something's fulfilling even if the activity or the object isn't worthy, because we all can see that we don't want to be deluded into it. We don't want to be forced into the subjective illusion. We just have that idea. Take a note. So, since what is missing is not the subjective matter, from the inside we must assume that Sisyphus' life is as good as can be. We must look for an objective feature which characterizes what is lacking. The second popular view I brought up earlier names or at least gestures towards a feature that might fit the bill. Alrighty, let's go back to our success criteria. We absolutely drew from prior knowledge. I think we drew up nuances. What I really like actually towards the end is the test from an objective point of view, not about whether or not Sisyphus enjoyed the rolling the ball up the hill and probably found it fulfilling if that became his life's passion or obsession. What I like about it is this really kind of clever test, which is implied, is that most of us would not, if we were given the opportunity, Most of us would not choose to or let ourselves be deluded into thinking rolling a ball up the hill is fulfilling. Because we know that even though we accept the fact that subjectively we might find it quite a fulfilling experience once we've been deluded, we know that it's futile. We just know that it's a pointless activity. So we don't want to be deluded into doing something pointless. Okay. And that for me is the test of the objective criteria. It's implied in what she said. It's not directly stated, but it's definitely implied. So again, the fact that it has objective worth, the fact that it has objective, that there is an objective component to meaning comes from the fact that we would choose not to be deluded into doing something futile or pointless. That futility and worth and purpose have an objective component to what they are. They're not something that's subjectively created, because we could easily imagine ourselves being deluded into doing something that still is pointless. Okay. And then we come across the ultimate criticism of the fulfillment view, that despite the fact that the subjective yearning and passion and love of what you do is incredibly important for meaning, it can't be the only component. It's a necessary but not sufficient criterion for meaningfulness, right? And we need to look at the second commonly held view, which is to act on something that has an external call, something bigger than yourself, independent of yourself too. We need to look at that to see if that's going to be the second criteria that will help us fill in the gaps. And I think what we're going to find is that it by itself can't fill in the gaps, but when you consider them in an active relationship, the subjective component and the objective component actively working with each other, then you probably get the answer that you're looking for. That's what I'm predicting. We'll see if I'm correct or not. All right. Cheers.